Welcome back, Wargamers. Today I'm going to show you how to make some really cheap and easy casualty markers using just plastic box sets of infantry I have lying around. I really like casualty markers. Most rule sets require some sort of marker when showing hits or wounds, and I like painting up these markers because they help your battle tell a story. If you have a bunch of casualty markers, you can look down at your playing surface and know where the really hard-fought sections of the battle were, where your troops were valiant or where they were soundly defeated. And I think it really adds something to, the immersion of your war game. That being said, though, if you look around, plastic infantry boxes are plentiful these days for almost any era. I showed there a nice box of Gripping Beast Dark Age Warriors, and here are some Wargames Factory extra sprues I had lying around of early Imperial era Germanic troops. And while these are everywhere, I haven't found any like plastic casualty markers anywhere. Instead, you'll have to pay £6 or $8 for 4 metal casualty markers. And that works out to almost $2 per marker. And while I am more than happy to pay that for some quality regular infantry, I'm not willing to pay that much for a marker on my wargaming table. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to take these normal plastic infantry, cut them from their bases, and kind of glue them in different poses to act as casualty markers. You can see I have several different infantry I'm already kind of in the stages of putting together to act as casualty markers. And it's pretty easy, and you can do some really simple poses, just guys clutching their chests, lying face down. As you see here, I'm going to make a fancy guy in this tutorial where he's actually kind of taking a javelin to the chest, and it's going to be a lot of fun. This is from the Gripping Beast Dark Age line, and I took a horn blower, cut off the horn. I'm going to kind of drill through his hand, and this guy's going to have just taken a spear to the chest. And so today's tutorial is just going to be showing how I assemble these casualty markers, showing kind of the different kind of poses you can make. The good thing about plastics is you can really glue together the different pieces in really unique combinations to get all sorts of different effects of that are often more dynamic than what you will see with metal casualty markers, which are just guys lying down usually. I'm going to show kind of two different methods: a really traditional casualty, which is really easy, and that's a little more involved, but you get a cool result from it with this guy that's being hit by javelin. I tried to do a painting tutorial for this, but I cannot paint with a camera. It turned out horrible when I tried, so I gave up on that. But anyways, this should be a nice video if you are interested in making some cheap markers, which costs around 60 cents per figure. Then this might be something you want to take advantage of, especially if you have spare plastics lying around. And this can be used, of course, for nearly any era. Alright, probably even fantasy, but I hear fantasy plastics are almost as expensive as metals, so it might not apply to them. So first thing for this guy who has unfortunately been hit by some enemy missile fire is I'm going to attach the different arms. Now I already drilled through his hand, and if you notice, I kind of cracked his fingers, but I'll show how to use some modeling putty to fix that here shortly. But the first thing, I just want to make sure that I have his hand lined up correctly on his chest, and I'm going to use this little hand drill here as well to drill through my figure. And again, these hand drills are awesome. Everyone should have them when dealing with figures. They're pretty cheap on Amazon. You get them for $10 or so, and they're great for pinning figures if you break an arm or something like that. And we'll be actually pinning this guy later to his base because we're going to have him kind of falling back at a weird angle, and so we'll need to make sure that he is fit securely to his base. And this is like, again, this is a more in-depth kind of marker than you might have to make. If you just want to make your normal guy laying down, these markers take like 5 minutes to make. You just clip them off the sprue and glue the arms on, glue the head on. Usually cut off their base at their feet and just lie them on your MDF base or whatever you're using, and boom, you have a marker which you can prime, and it will look good. But again, I like the fact that with plastics I can make these really dynamic looking casualty markers, and so that's what I'm going to do. So we're just drilling through this guy, and once I drill through him, I'll take my wire spear and thread it through him, and then place the arm on afterwards to get it ready to be glued on. When I did this, at first I just kind of glued them on with some PVA to just give an initial idea of what I was wanting, and then when I was sure with the pose I wanted, I ripped it back off. And then here I actually glued it with some super glue. And if you notice, when he's holding the spear, his arm didn't actually meet flush with the figure. There's this gap there. So we got to take care of that. He's not going to be lying down. If you're doing a figure that's lying down, you don't have to worry about those sorts of gaps. If he's lying on his back, don't worry about it. You can have him clutching his chest, and you'll never know that, his arm is barely on there. But since this guy's going to be standing up, I need to fill it. So I use this this putty that I have, Tamaya, I believe it's how it's pronounced. I don't know. It's a Japanese putty, and it's great stuff. So I'm just going to put a little bit on my finger, and I'm going to try not to make a mess of this, but I'm sure I will. So I'm just filling in that gap with my finger, and I'm not going to worry about it getting completely flush, but it will fill it up enough to where the kind of crevice along his shoulder won't be noticeable, and I'm putting it on his fingers as well. And this stuff is also sandable, paintable. It is great. I think it works better than using Milliput or green stuff, and I got it off Amazon for a few bucks. It wasn't bad. So if you're an Amazon Prime member, take advantage of this. So I'll come back to him now after that putty has dried. I'm just going to take some coarse sandpaper, run it over him one time, run over, especially in those excess areas. You see I got it all over him, which I did not mean to do, but I'll just sand off any bumpy patches that we have there, and I'll also quickly sand over his hands to ensure that his fingers have the correct definition. I don't want a big lump of putty sitting there in the middle of his fingers. But again, if you want to fill gaps in figures, this stuff is great. Alright, so I filled up his shoulder, and I've also filled up his hand where I kind of cracked him while making this, and I think it's going to work pretty well. I'm going to need to mount this figure now, and so I am drilling a hole through his foot to pin him to his marker. This is the traditional method of pinning that most people use when dealing with miniatures, just taking my hand drill, drilling a sizable hole through his foot, and then I'm just going to take a paper clip, which I'm kind of testing to make sure it's the correct depth right here, and I find that it is what I need. So I will now drill a hole in my base, cut a length of paper clip, stick it through both, and then I will super glue that onto the base. So as I said, I'm going to skip the painting section because I really cannot paint with a camera in my face, but after going through just a quick paint job, these are markers, so I'm not going to spend as much time as I normally would blending them and worrying too much about making sure I don't have too much high contrast. So after just a quick rough paint job, I think they actually turned out really well. This guy was that original hornblower from that Gripping Beast box, which I modified to now be taking a spear, and for the effort, I think he turned out rather well, and he cost me 60 cents rather than $2 or $3 for a pose that I probably wouldn't have liked as well. And then if you just want to be really super easy though, you can do a pose that you see over there on the right of a guy just lying down, having taken a wound, and all you really have to do is just clip their feet off their base and lie them down, and you have yourself a casualty. And one thing I also like to do with my casualty markers, I like to kind of have two generic sets for my eras, and I paint them all the same color so that you know whose casualties they are. So this guy over here that I'm holding, he's going to be my green team. It's hard to tell, it's very light green. And over there, the guy laying down will be his opponent, the blue team. So, you know, I like to color coordinate all my markers so you can look at the battlefield and know which casualty belongs to which player. So there you go. Hopefully this was helpful, and you can go through your bits drawer and find some of these sprues that you just have lying around and make some nice little casualty markers to make your table a little more immersive, to give it that kind of extra visual appeal that when you look down you can see what's going on over the course of a battle. So hopefully you liked this video. If you did, please feel free to like and subscribe to my videos. I'll be doing much more of these kind of terrain and hobby tutorials as I myself experience them. So until next time, guys, keep playing with toy soldiers.